Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight on 207. I'm Samantha York.
And I'm Rob Caldwell. Coming up this evening, the story behind the new novel by Maine writer Boo Walker could make for a pretty good novel all by itself. You'll hear about the weird coincidences that prompted Walker to conclude this was a book he had to write. But first tonight, we often hear of and tell stories about neighbors helping neighbors in Maine. Sometimes it's an entire community that comes together.
One family in Yarmouth is still thankful for the support they received after facing the most difficult road of their lives. Losing anyone you love is painful.
He was very stubborn and very competitive.
Losing a child.
Gibson, he was passionate and loving. He had an amazing amount of energy around him.
Is excruciating.
He was also like kind of sneaky good. He would do things that he wouldn't talk about that were just really generous, you know, helping his friends, helping people that he didn't know very well.
Gibson Harnett, or Gibby, as his parents Kendall and Deanna call him, was a three-sport athlete at Yarmouth High School and was known for his competitive nature.
I remember we bought him a Barbie house one time because I was like, we're not doing gender roles. And the Barbies jumped off the top of the building and crashed into the ground, and always wanting to play and roughhouse and play sports.
He loved sports, but I think even more than he loved sports, he loved being part of a team. I think that was always, you know, his motivating factor. He loved his coaches, he loved his teammates.
Those teammates, many of whom became his good friends, were at the center of his world.
One, he's the most competitive guy I've ever met in my life. But two, he's also the most genuine, loving, person that I've ever met.
He was, an unbelievable friend. He would tell it to you like it is, even if you didn't want to hear it.
He's not the teammate that would take every shot or be a ball hog. He'd actually want his teammates to succeed and to have that glory as well.
Gibson took his love for the game to college and eventually to his first job in New York City. On his 24th birthday, May 6th, 2023, Gibson went to the doctors for what he thought was a pulled muscle from playing basketball. It turned out to be much worse.
We know what late stage means. We know what metastasize means. We know these terms, unfortunately.
Gibson had cancer.
The official diagnosis happened at the end of May, and it was clear cell sarcoma, and it's a very rare cancer that there's no cure for. There's like a 1% chance, or a very small percentage chance that you beat it, and so we, on our family text, got a text from Gibson, and it said, "I'm going to beat this. It's 1%. And
why can't I be that 1%?
Yeah,
somebody has to be.
Somebody has to be.
He texted our group chat, and I still remember the text. He mentioned he didn't spell out cancer right away. He just said the C word, and from there I didn't read the rest of the text because it was just so hard. I just stood there in shock.
He knew what his plan was. He was confident in his doctors having a plan, and he, kind of instilled the faith in us that he was going to try to beat this thing, and he had every bit of confidence that he could.
Clear cell sarcoma produces tumors. Gibson had them throughout his body. Hoping for a miracle, he started experimental immunotherapy treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York.
He posted on his Instagram the first day he started his immunotherapy treatment.
It was a multi-page post, and the last page were just those 3 words, "time to compete." And I read it, and it just resonated with me, especially who he was and what it meant.
I just thought it was a really catchy phrase that he was like, hey, it's time for me to, stand up and I'm going to fight this. And it did mean that in some ways. I think what we realized after is that what he was also doing is he was telling all his friends, it's time for you to compete too. it's time for us to come together and be a team. And then for him to give a rallying cry to his friends that, I'm going to need you in this fight just as much as I have to be the fighter.
The reality of it all was cruel, and yet with his family and friends by his side, Gibson remained strong.
They went out and they did stuff. They lived. They had a good summer. It wasn't really until October where he started really struggling with the disease. At one point he's like, if I end up in a wheelchair, I'm going to rock that wheelchair. It's just amazing.
Gibson carried that attitude with him until the very end. On January 4th, 2024, 7 months after his diagnosis, Gibson took his last breath.
We had so much support here, as did he, and our community came together like nobody's business.
In his final months, Gibson was pushing on and finding a way to help other young people fighting cancer. He started his own nonprofit for patients in their 20s.
This is Gibby's incarnation, his idea.
The main idea for creating this was to help others, and that's always has been his motto and stuff, and what he lived by. But I also do think that another potential reason for him creating Time to Compete was to kind of have a building block for his friends and family to come together.
Time to Compete was no longer a motto, it was a movement. When we come back, a closer look at the organization Gibson left behind and the people who are carrying his legacy into the future. Stay with us.
For the last year, Gibson Harnett's friends and family have been meeting every month to go over ideas and plans for the nonprofit Time to Compete. That organization is one of the first of its kind in our state and specifically supports young adults battling cancer.
The idea came to Gibson after his own diagnosis with clear cell sarcoma, a rare cancer with a 1% survival rate. Even in his final moments, that deep desire to help others was shining through. And now the people he especially loved are carrying on his mission.
Time to Compete is about, all about perseverance, going through the ups and downs with the people that you care about the most.
To me, Time to Compete is about unity.
Time to Compete means something different to everyone.
Time to Compete is all about vulnerability, because without vulnerability, there would be no unity or perseverance.
For Gibson Harnett, his friends and family,
It means getting up every day and facing the world, even though sometimes it is really hard to do that.
it means no young adult has to fight cancer alone.
We filed the paperwork for the charity in November. He had come to us and said, I'm grateful. I feel like I've got these opportunities that people in my age group don't have.
Gibson's fight with clear cell sarcoma, a rare and painful disease that produces tumors, showed him the financial burden that comes with fighting for your life.
He lived in Queens, and for him to go to Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is like 5 miles, would cost him $65 or $70 Uber ride. The train was under repair on his block, so he couldn't walk. And people sent him Uber cards, and we said, here, use our credit card. People don't always have that option.
Gibson's goal was to remove some of those barriers.
Especially in Maine, the impediment of having to be able to pay for gas to get to someplace or to get your groceries taken care of is it's devastating for that age group, for 19 to 29-year-olds. We are a completely 100% volunteer board.
When patients are connected with Time to Compete, the nonprofit Gibson started to support young adults fighting cancer, they receive support almost immediately.
And the packet includes a Hannaford gift card, a Cumberland Farms gift card, some stickers, a tattoo, about a thing about our organization, and then some Time to Compete gear.
Currently, it's all going to cancer patients in Maine, 19 to 29-year-olds. If you are unfortunate to fall into that, All you need is an oncology healthcare worker or any kind of healthcare liaison to help you get connected to us, and no questions asked, we send stuff to you.
Before he passed, Gibson was involved in everything from the website to the nonprofit's logo and merch to events that would help raise money and awareness around its cause.
He had sketched out, he's like, okay, we're gonna do an art auction, we're gonna do a race, we're gonna do a basketball tournament.
Earlier this year, Southern Maine Community College hosted a Time to Compete doubleheader with its men's and women's basketball teams.
It's amazing to see Time to Compete on everybody's back today. It's really special for me.
It gave the community a chance to learn more about the organization and gave Gibson's dad, Kendall, the chance to talk about his son.
If you play team sports long enough, you've probably heard the phrase, teamwork makes the dream work. But in reality, teamwork does something greater. It makes the unbearable bearable. Over the past few years, I've learned a lot about teamwork, discovering the power of community, trust, and unity. My son Gibson, on his 24th birthday, went in for a routine MRI on his hip for what he thought was a pulled muscle. A pulled muscle he got playing basketball. The diagnosis was a tumor, more specifically late-stage clear cell sarcoma, particularly nasty type of cancer.
Events like this and messages like this one from Gibson's sister Parker.
Time to Compete is about perseverance. It's about pushing through when things get really hard.
Keep the momentum and their mission going.
We have really high hopes for this organization. Right now, we're centered in Maine, which is an awesome start, but we want to have national reach.
This is just the beginning. And people like Parker, Gibson's girlfriend Izzy, his friends and family are making sure Time to Compete will always be there to help support and spread a bit of hope to those who need it most.
I think the pillars of Time to Compete, unity, perseverance, vulnerability, is something that Gibson always led by.
That's something that I'll carry on forever and that I'll remember for the rest of my life, was just how he didn't look inwards throughout this whole difficult situation, but rather he looked outwards and wanted to help those who were struggling.
The growth that we've seen through Time to Compete this year, he'd be extremely excited about. Seeing the growth, I think he'd be very proud of what he kickstarted.
Everyone wants to be a part of it. Everybody wants to join in, and we've had some really good, exciting meetings. We don't quite know where they're gonna go. It just seems like it's such an easy ask. Don't let people have cancer be by themselves. Figure out how to help.
Tough story.
What a gift. What a legacy.
Time to Compete has events planned all year to help raise money and more awareness around their cause. You can learn more about the organization and how you can help at timetocompete.org.
Stay with us. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Boo Walker lives in Cape Elizabeth and is the author of more than a dozen books.
His latest is a murder mystery novel called The Secrets of Good People. The story of how the book came to be is a good one in itself, and we took Boo Walker slightly back in time so he could lay it all out for us. 2020, you're down in Florida, living in Florida, and you had just published a book, and there was a party for the book, and a woman came up to you afterwards. What did she say?
Bingo. So the book was actually called An Unfinished Story, and it was about a grieving widow who'd found an unfinished manuscript that her husband had left behind. And so this woman came up to me after the party and said, "You won't believe it, but I have an unfinished manuscript myself that my mother wrote." And she wrote it in 1970 and just passed away in 2013.
And did you say to yourself, "Oh, that's kind of nice, but and I find it interesting, but nothing's going to happen here," or did you have a different kind of reaction?
I thought it was a fascinating coincidence, but of course, it wasn't my first thought to think, "Oh, well, I'll help you finish it," because I get approached with things like that occasionally.
So a couple of years went by, And she came back, sort of circled back to you in a serious professional way through an agent, right? And wanted you to look at her late mother's unfinished manuscript in a very serious way, correct?
Correct. Correct. 45,000 words. Most of my books are 120, to give you an idea. No outline, no sense of who did it. Just here, read this, and please. And eventually I caved in. I have a little house on Peaks Island, and I said, I'm going to read a chapter and politely decline just to move on from this. You know, it's been several years, and I sat down and burned through all 45,000 words without stopping. I was floored. It was kind of, I feel goosebumps right now. It was kind of magical.
The woman who had written this manuscript was Peggy Shaneberg. Tell me a little about her.
Sure. What really brought this thing together, she was a writer and journalist, and in 1948 she married the love of her life, who had just come back from World War II. And the way they got married is they won a contest on Bride and Groom Radio, which was one of the first reality shows. And this was 1948. And when I heard that story, I knew it was meant to be, because my grandparents were also married with Bride and Groom Radio in 1948. Kind of mesmerizing.
We think hokey reality shows are a new phenomenon, but this is fascinating because 1948, your grandparents and Peggy Shaneberg had both been married on this show called Bride and Groom.
Yes, exactly. And they fly you out to Hollywood. It's a big deal. It's not just a little thing. They fly you out to Hollywood. They give you this extraordinary dress. They invite celebrities. They treat you world class. And there's only a few that happen every year. So it just so happened that my grandparents and Peggy and her husband Norman were just right near each other.
All right, now you're definitely hooked. You're going to write The Secrets of Good People. You've got this unfinished manuscript, about 45,000 words, which 45,000 words, maybe a little less than half the length of what you would normally write for a novel. How hard was it for you to take what she had written and then turn it into a finished book?
I committed to 2 books last year because I thought it would be rather easy. And as I learned very quickly sitting down that though I was given this gem of a start, that the challenges were tremendous, figuring out what was in her head, figuring out how I could blend her writing with mine, which became an ultimate challenge. Because I didn't want people to read it and say, oh, right at this 45K mark, I can see Boo taking over and I recognize his writing. So I had to go back and kind of, tether out her stuff some and then extend it and figure out who did it and, create my own story out of it.
What, in a nutshell, is the story that you tell here?
This is an Agatha Christie-style murder mystery set in 1970 on a small island. And so there's 8 characters and somebody did it.
So again, just to connect the dots here for everyone, you had just finished a novel that involved an unfinished manuscript, and this woman came up to you and told you about an unfinished manuscript, which became this new book.
Bingo, and I had the title for years waiting for the right part, and I knew that was another piece that locked into place, The Secrets of Good People.
Writers always like it when good ideas fall from the heavens, because it doesn't happen all that frequently.
No, I wish it did.
But you could write another 50 books in your life and you'll never have an experience like this one, will you?
It changed my life for sure.
How so?
It was just such an extraordinary challenge, and it just reminded me of the magic of what's out there if you really, connect.
Again, the name of Boo Walker's new novel, written with Peggy Shaneberg, is The Secrets of Good People. More information about the book and the author in the 207 section of our News Center Maine app or website.
We will be right back.
If you ever miss anything on 207, remember you can catch all of our episodes on our News Center Maine Plus app.
You can download it for free and stream it right on your TV. It's available on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. Always lots of good stuff on there for you to check out. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Have a good night. Hope to catch you next time right here on 207.